This is the Chasing Tomorrow podcast with Joe Gagnon. We bring you captivating conversations that will inspire all of us to go after our own version of a high-performance life. Welcome to the Chasing Tomorrow podcast. Today I'm going to spend some time with Hope Wagner. She's the CEO, founder of a company called Y Consult, which it'll be an interesting story because what we're going to talk about here a little bit is sort of this evolving idea that we have around how do companies run, how do they get built, how do we live, how do we show up, who we are. I think we're at an interesting time in sort of, we'll call it human history just for fun, but there was a world where we all sort of just worked our 9 to 5 jobs or worked 80 hours, and we never found a way to do a successful integration of who we are with what we do. And now that we're living longer, and hopefully all of us are going to live healthier longer, we have to be more explicit about that. And so if you're going to go start a company or you're just going to go lean into your career, you want to be really intentional about the thinking of what are the implications of that. And how more explicit we are, the better it's going to be. And so I think Hope has done a lot of that thinking, and she's still working through some of it. So we're going to sort of dig into that because I think it'll be helpful to all of us in whatever we're doing. The journey that we're on doesn't have to be the journey of the way it was, but the journey of the way we want it to be. So with that, Hope, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So maybe before we jump into like how you ended up starting something, because we're always sort of curious about that, tell a little bit more about yourself, sort of, I don't know, your upbringing, your growth, what interested you. We always end up with a lot of athletes and everyone's like, well, when did you start running? It's like, but what people first? And so, yeah, let's get to know you a little bit better. Give me your backstory for everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for the opportunity. So, my name is Hope Wagner. I am a Kentucky farm girl at heart. I grew up in a very poor part of Kentucky, in South Central Kentucky, and had a very close family. There were lots of kids. We had 7 kids at my house. And so, one bathroom with 7 kids is a lot. But yeah, so I grew up there, and my dad worked in construction, and my mom was a stay at home mom and took care of us and really empowered me to chase my dreams when I was young and encouraged me to go after whatever it was that I wanted. And so I've been very grateful for that. And I've kind of been doing that ever since, just really dreaming big and going for it as much as I can. And so, yeah, that's a little bit about me.
So, all right. Yeah, that's good context. But it's never that simple, right? I mean, I know it's
No.
not only have family support. I mean, that's really important, and I think that that is a currency we trade on for our whole lives. I think sometimes we don't realize how important that is. All right, so when high school, how did that go? And did you go to university afterwards? What were some of the choices you made? Because ultimately, I got to imagine that at that moment you weren't thinking, "Oh, I'm going to go found a company one day, be a CEO." So, like, what was going on through that the part of our lives that sometimes seems very hard?
Yeah, absolutely. Where I grew up, there was lots of corruption. We were incredibly poor, and to the point that I can remember we would go to landfills on the side of the road and look for shoes or toys or what have you. And we were incredibly poor. And I saw a lot of injustice around me. There were my brothers could get a speeding ticket or in trouble in some way, and they were sort of targeted, while others in the community that maybe they had a family name or different background were able to get around some of that. And so at a very young age, my goal was to pursue a career in prosecution. I wanted to be a prosecutor.
Wow.
I was going to go to law school and was going to right all of the wrongs was what I was thinking at that point in my life. And so I that was really it. It was this sense of righting wrongs, I think, that really drove me to ultimately pursue an education and work in the legal industry. My path didn't go exactly like I had hoped. I think that's probably true for most of us.
Yeah.
So I ended up getting married and having a child when I was 21.
Oh boy.
And so I worked full time. I went to school at Western Kentucky University part time, and it took me a long time to kind of achieve my goals. And so through that evolution of kind of getting into the workforce and being a full time mom too and wife, it really kind of changed my course. But I have never looked back. It's really been an incredible journey.
Yeah, and so as you start to figure out how to do all of that, right? How did your career start to develop, and where were some of these foundation elements that would make you think about what you're doing today?
My parents instilled in me this sense of always wanting to learn and grow and surround yourself with opportunities. My dad had an eighth grade education, but he went into construction and he was always putting himself in a position to grow. So he ended up being, with an eighth grade education, a project manager for a major highway construction company in Illinois and Kansas. He would come home with blueprints. He could do math in his head in amazing ways and just always pushed us to surround ourselves with smarter people than us and never be afraid to go after something. And so that's really what I've tried to do is just kind of always put myself in a position to be around people that are incredibly smart, that have done amazing things, and just try to learn from them and grow. And so that's really been the evolution of my career. I was very blessed to have an accounting position at a law firm, a very large law firm, with owners that were, and they really gave us the opportunity to try new things, to fail, to come up with new ideas. And through their mentorship and leadership, I was able to become a CFO at 28, which is pretty unusual, but they were just so supportive. And so that's really been the thing. And the sort of what set my course the way that it is today is I've just had incredibly supportive people in my life that have helped to put me in the right places.
So you're now establishing yourself, you know, family, you're starting to get some significant responsibility in your career. How was that going? I mean, did you find the ability to do this? I mean, CFO is a big job, kind of like not just because of anything, but just the responsibility. How were you feeling about that? Because probably you felt great on one level, but maybe it was hard on another.
Yeah, it was a passion. So I've always had this passion for growth. I again just had really great people in my life. So I was able to bring my sons in their car carriers to the office, and if it was Saturday morning, they were there with me at the office kind of running around and I was doing what I needed to do. And so I just have always, and I still do this, tried to incorporate my family into my work life to create that balance. And because you're exactly right. It's a lot of responsibility. It's a lot of time development. But I mean, if we keep a very structured life and disciplined schedule, we can do those things and accomplish those things and still have that balance.
And made a couple of points early, which is that you didn't started with anything, right? You had nothing, which is always sort of like I think part of the storyline I like to think about is that it doesn't have to be the end, right? It
Right.
can really just be the beginning. And I think might be some people who think we all have some privilege, but actually most of what we end up with is earned, really. At the end of the day, even if you've started with something, it's still earned. And so as you started to have more, how did you start to feel about yourself, and how was your life changing having come from such a difficult start?
I still struggle with that today. I mean, it's not an easy thing. It's not an easy thing to feel like you have more maybe than those around you or more than maybe what you should have. And so I was actually talking to my son about this yesterday and we were talking about financials and talking about business planning. He's going into his senior year, so he's, really interested in the business and how to set up business and everything that goes into it. And he's looking at financials and he's like, here's the potential that I see. And we're talking through that together. And I think I made this point to him, and it really is how I feel and really kind of sums up the answer to your question. I don't do what I do because I'm thinking about what I'm going to have from a material standpoint. That's really not what drives me. It's a benefit of the work that's put in, but I struggle with the material side of things and having more. But what I really love and what lights me on fire is just creating things and having success and learning and growing. And so that's really where the passion comes in. But that material side of things, I still struggle with that.
Yeah, so this identity that you started with, which the foundation of all whom we are, a lot of it happens in our first 7 years of our lives, is a big foundation culturally, how we feel about ourselves in every different dimension. So your identity starts to evolve. You get through school, you have a family, you have these jobs of responsibility. You now have a little bit more wealth that you might not have ever experienced, and so the identity is shifting. And are you feeling as you go along this way? Like, are you understanding what's happening? Like, is it aware? Or you just because I think a lot of people get onto what we call the treadmill of work and life, and you all of a sudden we wake up one day and we're like, "Whoa, what happened?" Because we really never picked our head up. When did it start to seem? Because anyone who would go to your website or read anything about what you've been doing, there's been some epiphany that we'll get to here at some point. But did it start to emerge, or was it still too early for that?
I would say I've never really spent a lot of time focused on it. I've not spent a lot of time thinking about it, not thinking about the material gains or the financial success. It's always been more about wanting to build something that I could be proud of and that my dad would be proud of. I mean, it's really been about the pursuit of that. I want my kids to look at me and see that they can achieve anything they want to achieve, and so that's really been the driving force for me. That's that epiphany moment really came for me probably in terms of what putting into work maybe more of yourself than you should came when my dad passed away in 2020. I was leading a national law firm as their COO and acting CMO and CFO for that matter at the time, and I missed a lot of phone calls from my dad, and I had a lot of unread voicemails. I'm sorry to say, and then I found that I unexpectedly was going to lose him, and I was very grateful to be able to spend his last week with him in the hospital. But
Nice.
I still have those voicemails. And so if I'm ever maybe getting a little too buried in work, I'll just look at my phone and I'll see that red dot and I'll know, I'll remember. That's my moment of just being present to say that everything's fleeting. We have no guarantees in life. And so it's just important to pursue our dreams for sure, but never to forget what's really important. And that is just being present in life.
It's so fascinating to me. There's stuff that we can sort of, we'll call it intellectually understand, and then there's what we do in life. And there may be this point where we cross to the other side of that sort of more values driven way of thinking actually becomes what we do. But there's, let's say, basic needs, right? We'll go Maslow's hierarchy for a quick second and say once basic needs are met, which after some point in time you were doing, you no longer needed the dumpster to provide for yourself. And then we start to work towards self-esteem on this way, maybe one day to self-actualization. But the piece that we tend to sort of value and measure in society the most is that we define the idea of peak performance as peak financial performance. And that is the goal, right? More money or more title or more like that, right? And we talk about the other side, which is this idea of meaning and purpose, or even more just a fulfilled life. And everyone who knows me knows I don't actually buy into the idea of a balanced life. I like an integrated life. I think that balance is an excuse. That's just language. So you have this journey that you're going on here, and you're driving towards this what you would measure as the most way you could measure success. Like, okay, I could write about it on LinkedIn. I can go to my high school reunion, can tell everyone I'm a CFO of a big law firm, or I am this and I'm making a whole bunch of money and look how great I am. But then we keep talking about the rest, but we don't do much about it, right? So this, I was talking to you before about this idea of a 2 by 2, like
Yeah.
that peak performance is not defined as sort of more broadly than just money. And that the meaning and purpose on the x-axis is we usually don't get much past one. Has this started to become sort of like part of how you're thinking that these two have to be true at the same time? And then what is it about society? Are we ever going to get to a place where we value something more than just that financial performance?
Ooh, I hope so. I hope we're gonna get there as a society. I do because I have never been focused on money. It has come as a result of hard
Mhm.
work for sure. And not just hard work, but pursuing because you can work really hard and not make money. Just to be clear, you can work really
Yep.
hard at the wrong things. But just pursuing dreams and goals and passions. And so money has been a part of that. And I'm very blessed and thankful for that. So I don't want to diminish it in any way. But for me personally, that's never been my journey. It's never been my focus. And while it feels good to be rewarded for the hard work that I put in, it's really more about that sense of accomplishment. Like, what drives me is being able to get up in the morning and go to work and do something that I feel like is helping someone else. Maybe it's not changing the world. Maybe it's I'm not a prosecutor and I'm not cleaning up whatever's going on, but I feel like I have impact in the lives of those people that I work with. I feel like I have impact in the companies and the owners that I've worked for, and in the lives of my children. And that's my goal, was to be able to feel good at the end of the day, like I've contributed. And so that's really what has always driven me. I haven't been focused on the money piece, but I know people are. And what I would say about that is that you're just never going to find meaning in it. It's just never going to be enough, you know? And I think you should I think I am trying to free myself from that perception that there's going to be some amount of money that is going to change things. It can go away tomorrow. We can lose all of that in a day, you know? And
Mm.
so I hope that we can get there. I really do.
Yeah. I I think that we are, at least in my worldview, that 20 to 30 years from now, that the fundamentals of how we show up with our 168 hours in a week in terms of work and what's possible, the AI is going to sort of reframe a lot. Like we were farmers, then we were industrial,
Right.
then we became knowledge workers. There's another phase after this, which we can call whatever we want, and we'll just use the AI word for right now. But in each of these phases, we worked differently and we showed up differently, and but we still have some of the remnants of the past. The remnant of the past is the 40-hour work week, which was really an industrial invention of sorts, right? People to run the machine.
Right.
Well, if you have an AI assistant, imagine now we've always used this word democratized, but if we all of us could have an assistant in quotes, not a person, but this tech, how much better are we? And then what do we do differently? And then what if you only in the traditional language of work only worked 20 hours a week? What would you do with the extra time? How would you live? And then if all that was true and we did still have this world of abundance, would we then have something that would approximate universal basic income, meaning that it doesn't matter how much, because like, well, yeah, I guess someone still wants their $50 million yacht, but ultimately it seems like part of the reason why we continue to value it is because it's not evenly distributed.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
so with that, then you set out now recently to go start a new company, to think about AI, to think about
Mhm.
all what you've learned and do something different. And so tell me a little bit about like what was the trigger point to say, okay, I'm going to do something different. What were you feeling? What were you seeing? What did you want to accomplish here?
Several things. And what a great lead up to that question. There's so much to unpack there. But for me, I was working 75 hours a week at times. And my son's like, are you going to work all weekend or are we going to hang out? What's going on? And a lot of what I was doing was really not the highest and best use of my time. It was things that certainly anyone really could do, or at least the machine could do. And so that was something that I was thinking about. And then couple that with, I was having a conversation with a really great friend of mine who is a serial entrepreneur, and he is also a consultant. And he was like, how do I scale? How do I solve this problem? I've got all this data coming at me that I then have to process. And how do I create a unique consulting plan for every client I have when I just don't have time to process all that data and then really, really provide value? And he, like me, he really cares about providing that value. And so I started thinking about it and I'm like, the solution is there. The solution is AI. Certainly, when Alan Turing and Marvin Minsky set out in the 50s and early 60s to invent this thing called artificial intelligence and machine learning, their goal was to take a problem, a big problem, and kind of break it down into simpler and simpler problems until they got to one that they could solve. It was that problem reduction. And so I started thinking about it from that perspective and really came up with the idea or the concept that we can take a large language model and we can train it on the various inputs of finance, marketing, operations, technology, accounting, customer service, and sales. We can take the collective knowledge of all of the experts that that I know, train a model to identify, to look for certain things within inputs, data inputs, and then to produce an action plan. And that really kind of solved his need for that scalability with his consulting clients. So now they can give inputs. He can get a customized, very tailored plan based on their inputs and based on the machine learning that we're doing and training that we're doing, model training. And now he's able to, instead of just doing administrative work of collecting and reading data, he's able to do what only he can do. And that is provide that strategic vision, which provides him that scalability, or he can keep the same number of clients and do an Ironman or whatever he wants to do, right?
Yeah.
Instead. So it was that freedom of choice to allow us to do whatever we wanted to do with those extra hours. But that was really the reason for the creation of Why Consult.
Yeah, so I'm going to try to sort of paraphrase in a sense for a lot of listeners here that what we think, and I think I probably agree on this, that at least for the next phase of what this AI, artificial intelligence, what is artificial intelligence anyway, but really a set of algorithms using a lot of data to sort of assemble some answers that would approximate what a human would do. Not artificial intelligence, which is sort of autonomous. This is assistance, right? And so boy, wow, isn't that powerful? We've been using stuff that would approximate that anyway. Even just a newspaper is the consolidation of a lot of information, a
Right.
set of people into something that would be consumable for all of us because we couldn't work on it. So these
Yeah.
tools are now in all of our hands potentially, right? And
Yeah.
it's not like we're seeding what humans need to do. It's actually making us more productive. I mean, like, I think that there's a few of us who are old enough who still probably think driving a car is fun. However, it's not really a great use of time, and we shouldn't be texting while we're driving.
Right.
We certainly shouldn't be doing anything else while we're driving. But if we use technology we still need to get places, right? Then we're more productive. And same thing. So more and more, we're going to find ways, I think, to be more productive, right, than we've been in the past and probably get even better outcomes. We still live in a world of abundance. There isn't a world of scarcity. We probably haven't even touched into all of that. So as you do this, you're starting into saying, I'm going to do this differently. What have you done yourself to get up to speed on the tech or how it works, or how would you use it inside a company? What have you particularly done?
Yeah, absolutely. So I took a course at MIT on business applications using artificial intelligence. So I'm educating myself
An
through.
online course?
Yes, it was. It was an online course. So I'm educating myself through taking courses at
Yep.
institutions that I feel like will add value in my pursuit of that. Doing tons of reading, talking to people and meeting people in this space, and just it's kind of like this, just having conversations with them to understand what they see happening and what they believe the future might be. So making those connections, lots of networking, lots of research, and also taking courses.
So good for everyone, right? This is accessible to all. We can all learn.
Absolutely.
So that's great. You learned this. And now, what started to really pique your curiosity as you were learning? Like, what was happening to you?
So my biggest pet peeve in life is inefficiency. What is more efficient than this tool, right? And so that certainly I just really got excited by freedom. So there's freedom in it, in that the things that kind of keep us bound to our desk in terms of reading data, summarizing data, spotting trends, and these types of things. So it was freedom for me. I wanted to get away from those, 70-hour work weeks and spend more time with my family, or going for runs, or being active, or yoga, or whatever I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And so there was that. And then there was just the ability to have more freedom in terms of being able to think strategically. And so, can you imagine what the future holds when all of this time is freed up from the mundane or administrative task, and we're
Yeah.
able to just freely think for periods of time? And so that was very appealing to me as well.
Yeah. And so then, had you started a company before this one?
I started a marketing agency in 2014.
Okay.
It was not successful. So success is born out of failure, right? But yeah, so this is my second go at entrepreneurship.
And why? Like maybe why do it again? Why give it another shot?
Oh gosh, because it's exhilarating to be able to create something, right? And what better motivator than missing the mark once? It just really motivates me to want to get it right. And so there's that. And also, I'm in a place in my life that was 2014. My kids were much younger and at home and higher needs, and in terms of just stability and benefits and things like that that a job would provide. But now I'm at a place where I've been able to store resources and feel confident in kind of pursuing something new again.
Was the idea always obvious to you, or how did it, like, you came up with the idea, said, I should go start this, or you said, I want to start something, what idea? Which way did it work for you?
Oh, no, it was the idea, and then I had conversations with various owners of businesses or executives, and they're like, "Oh, this is amazing. I would definitely buy into this," or, "Yeah, I would love to have something like this." And so when I started to have that proof of concept, I thought, "It's time to go." So first I had the idea, and then we went through a proof of concept period, and then the company was born from that.
And if we said, okay, the young hope who had nothing becomes entrepreneur, did you see yourself like that? Did you feel like, oh my gosh, I'm like just the native version of an entrepreneur? Or has it been, as much as you like the idea, right? How was that? Was that hard for you to sort of say, I'm going to trust myself? I'm going to be the person who's going to go create this, not someone else? How'd that feel?
Yeah, well, as a child, entrepreneurship was talked about a lot of my in my family. My dad, like I said, humble beginnings as well. Both my mom and my dad, both very smart people, but in a very impoverished part of the country, and just didn't have a lot of opportunity. But my dad, even though he worked construction to provide for the family, he was always looking for things to do in his off season, whether that be farming or logging or whatever that might be. So he started his own company, and I always wanted and dreamed that we would start a company together once he retired. That didn't come to fruition, but entrepreneurship was always a part of the fabric of our family and kind of what he was doing. And then secondly, I was in my 20s and I wanted to start something new. I wanted to leave Kentucky with my kids and move across the country and try to start something on my own. And I was full of fear around that decision, but definitely wanted it. And so I talked to him and just to get his advice, and he changed the course of my life. And now this is what I use anytime I'm making a decision. And he said to me very simply, what is the worst thing that can happen? You fail? Okay, no big deal. You come home if you want and you try it again. And so that's been it for me. It's always been that, okay, so what? I fail. It's going to be okay after that. And that has been the thing that's given me the confidence.
Yeah, that's sort of like, well, you didn't really have a backup plan, but this feeling that you had someone who had your back. It's really a really interesting part of where confidence can come from in our lives, right? Because we'll
Right.
go do something believing that. And once you believe that, then you rarely have any issues because it always sort of resolves itself one way or another very positive way. And so being able to continue to give that to others is really important, right? Both to your kids, to other people you know, and I got your back, I'll help you.
Right.
So you felt that there. How do you think about that concept as you build the company and as you I'm sure you're hiring people and doing that. How do you start to translate that into the culture and the fabric of what you're building?
That is so important to me as I'm building my team. It's that they understand that they are going to make decisions that are going to be wrong. And that's going to be okay. They're going to go down a path and maybe it won't work out, but it's going to be okay. We're going to work together. We're going to rebound. We're going to make decisions. We're going to pivot. So it's just being a leader that supports my team and gives them the freedom to be creative and make mistakes and just having that sense of security in the workplace. And, that's my goal. I want a team of exceptional professionals that love their craft and aren't afraid to take risk, understanding that we're going to work through it together. So that's how I am trying to employ that anyway today.
Yeah, well, I think that it's interesting, right? We're in a way we are in this transition. We're redefining a lot. I think I don't have any research in front of me saying this, but the work of the way that Gen Z is showing up in the workforce today is different.
Absolutely.
They don't see this big long-term value proposition. I'm not going to end up with some retirement thing and I'm just a bit of a transaction. So they aren't showing up in the same way. Maybe some are, but I think the employment sort of value proposition has changed significantly. And so you're working on building a new value proposition for employees. How, when you describe the work environment and then people join your work environment, how are people feeling about that? How do they see it?
They're excited about it. So we're a small crew right now. We have our marketing team is mostly outsourced, but there are three of us that are kind of working together to build this. And then I have my development team. And it's from an administrative perspective, three of us, and then my development team. And the developers, sometimes they are working on a new release and doesn't really go great. And then they'll call me after and be like, I am, so sorry about that. And my thing to them is, what is done is done. My confidence is in you. I know
Mhm.
that you know what you're doing and know that you've got this. So let's just get it right. Like, let's just go after it. And I've had them share with me that they're just so appreciative of that support and understanding, but also knowing that I have very high expectations when it comes to deliverables, but understanding that I'm going to be there to support them as well, as long as they're doing the things they need to do. So they've expressed gratitude and freedom about being creative. I love when I say, this is the thing I'm envisioning for the future. And they get so excited about creating that thing, you know what I mean? And working toward that path. And so just seeing the excitement on their face, and then they tell me how excited they are to be a part of that. It's very rewarding.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I imagine once we start to create people who believe that, see that themselves, they will do something similar because they believe that it's possible. As you think about that, why consult and what you're delivering to the market, how do you think about how you show up for the client differently? Combination of AI, new culture, new approach, new offering. What's the sort of the pitch and how's it resonating?
Well, it seems to be resonating well. We just got back from the National Bar Association convention. There were thousands of lawyers there, from government to civil rights. And so really had a chance to talk to corporate lawyers, really had a chance to talk to lots of different folks and different verticals. And the pitch is that there's not really a pitch. It's about what's happening for you. Tell me about what's going on for you, because if there's a process that you're stuck on or a problem that you're having, let's find a way for human intelligence and artificial intelligence to come together and solve that problem. And so that's really the pitch. It's really trying to understand the people and what they're going through and what they're trying to achieve, and then working with the development team to create a solution. And it's this very collaborative relationship that we're building, which is what makes me happy, which is where my passion comes in, is just working with people and making their lives better. And so it was very well received at the convention, and looking forward to working with those folks.
Nice. Very nice. So now you're up and running, you've transitioned. We were talking a little bit about now, how does health and wellness fit into this? How does your lifestyle choices fit into this? Stress, sleep,
Mm.
nutrition. What does the integrated life for Hope look like? And how,
Yeah. So I referred to it a couple times, but it wasn't so long ago. I was working a lot of hours and I didn't have time. So I love running, and it's my stress reliever. It gets me in a great place, just physically, mentally, spiritually. I love it. And yoga too. And I was at this place where I was getting up in the morning and bypassing my routine because I had so much work on my plate, and going right to the desk and getting started at 3 or 4 a.m. and then going until 7 or 8 p.m., and just no time for health, for good nutrition, for activity. And I found myself just not being myself, if that makes sense, not
yeah.
showing up like I want to show up. And so this business has given me the opportunity, through the integration of artificial intelligence and robotic process management and things like that, I've been able to get hours back in my day so that I can do yoga in the morning, I can journal in the morning, I can go for a run in the evening, I can do all of those things that are necessary for happiness and joy for me personally, and good health. And so that's really been the evolution for me.
How does it feel? Like, I mean, how different are you? Do you think you're showing up differently? People notice? I mean, you notice?
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, my son, so I spend a lot of time with my son. He's 17. I'm trying to soak up every moment I can get with him before he heads off to college. And so he has commented, he's like, "So you're not working on the weekends?" I'm like, "No, I'm not." I'm like, "Other things I want to do. I want to be there with you." So he's commented, "I feel so much happier. I feel healthier." And so it's been very good.
There you go. Well, and now, so it's interesting too. Of course, you start this company. Now you're dabbling in the sort of social media world. You're telling your story more. Hope, like many of us, we all just did our thing, right? Like we keep our head down, we do it. We don't tell our story too much because, like, who cares anyway, right? People do, and I do. And so, how has it felt when you start to tell people more about what you're up to, who you were, the struggle, and now where it is? How does that feel?
Honestly, it's challenging. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I'm stepping out of my comfort zone, and I want people to see my journey and my path because I hope it's an inspiration to others that might have a similar situation today. That you really can accomplish your dreams, not just by working hard, but really like finding yourself and taking some risk. And so yeah, it's very strange for me to talk about myself and my journey because it's new, but hopefully it creates something meaningful for someone.
Oh, yeah. I think that words we use casually, like the word authentic. And I was like, well, what does authentic mean? Could we be fake? I think that it's actually the willingness to sort of be open, honest, because the struggle, I don't care who you are, and even if you have all whatever you might think is success, there's still a struggle in there.
Right.
Sean and I were talking recently, Sean, about this idea that failure is actually growth, right? That is
That's
a
right.
word that we've defined negatively, but in fact, it's the way that our human system works is through failure it improves. And whether that's a system, it's an entrepreneurial idea, it's working on the gym, it's whatever it might be. It's the more aware we are about those moments, the higher the probability that we continue to improve. It is really like the uniqueness of the humankind is our ability to grow and develop. And stepping out like this, like you are, by both the way you've been presenting yourself through your website and your company, but in these kinds of settings is part of that journey to see what can come of that and the community that forms. Do you, as you think about that community now, when you're stepping into a new world, you were very comfortable in the old world of probably the legal profession. What is that like?
It's exhilarating. I because I just love learning new things. I love talking to people that have different perspectives. And so it's like being alive again, just if that makes any sense
Yeah,
whatsoever.
love
But
that.
yeah, it's been nice.
And do you feel like this energy level, of course, you feel like you have a high energy level right now, but do you feel more energy on a daily basis?
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Not dragging as much, right? And
Yeah, my mile time's better.
oh,
It's
there
still
you go.
it
Oh,
still has a lot of room to improve, but it's better than it was. I just yeah, I do. I just feel lighter. I really
mm.
do.
Isn't that interesting, right? What we do to ourselves versus how we would probably prefer to show up.
Right.
And it's so much under our control. I think that is the part of your story that is the most compelling, which is, I mean, I think we've all had a moment where we've decided whether it's the beginning or the end, not the end like of our lives, but the end of how we think about opportunity. And so you've sort of reframed that. But in that, through this new struggle, you have opened up sort of the aperture and the feeling and the energy system is alive because it's not buried under all those layers of whatever else you thought you were trying to be.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And you can certainly be inauthentic, fake, whatever you want to say. I think not intentionally, and I have to say, I think that I don't know that I was being authentic or living authentically. I feel like I was being what I needed to be or showing up how I needed to show up and for whatever role I was playing in terms of professionally or what have you. And so it is an incredible opportunity that I have today to run a company authentically and do the things I want to do and show up who I am. And so yeah, it's been an incredible journey for sure.
Yeah, I think that part of that, of course, you had the support all along. I think the other part where a lot of systems work by trying to create some homogeneity to that system
Right.
so that it works better. But really, I think with humans, the more we let people be who they are, the more productive they are. It's like when we try and not have them be that they become somewhat problematic. Not because
Absolutely.
they're problematic, but because we've forced them into that.
Yeah, we're trying to conform, right?
Yeah.
We're trying to make everyone conform to one set of values or one system within an organization specifically. And I I think that is the death of innovation when you try to force people into a box and an 8 to 5 or a 7 to 7 or whatever that looks like for your organization. But if you just don't give them the freedom to create, it's the end of innovation. So, yeah, I think that happens a lot in organizations today.
Yeah. So as you're giving your son advice as to how to think about the 4 years that he would spend at college, what are you telling him?
Not to take it too seriously. He is a man, he is an overachiever, and he puts so much pressure on himself to achieve academically. And I tell him, I'm like, look at me. I didn't go to the best schools. I didn't do any of the things that you would think that he's kind of looking at for his life that are going to dictate success. So it's really not about that. Certainly, education is very important and getting a quality education is, but success isn't predicated on that. It's really about, finding yourself. I think these next 4 years is what I'm telling him, and discovering who he is as a man and how he wants to show up in the world and what his passions are. And so, not to focus so much on the academics are important, but not to put too much emphasis on that and spend this time really finding out who he is. I took that journey later in life. And so, I would love for him to be able to do that.
Yeah, I always tell people that it's sort of sad to have regrets in life because you were there for the decision. So give yourself some grace.
Right.
Don't regret it because you decided. And so if we're present and intentional. It may not work out as we want, but I sometimes think that the sooner that happens in your life, the better it all becomes because then we're not carrying other burdens. Yeah, performance, sure, we all want peak performance. That's what we should all want, but
Yeah.
we can integrate that with sort of this much more life of meaning and purpose and intentionality. I'm coming up on almost 200 episodes of having done this podcast. I get to meet all these remarkable people. And I'm a runner like you, and I listen to a lot of podcasts, and I sort of wonder sometimes who is this really about? But one of the questions that they've been doing lately is they often say is there a question that the guest would like to ask the other person. So is there anything that I'm going to try this with you for the first time? Is there
Okay.
anything that you want to ask me?
Oh, wow. Yeah. I would love to ask you a question. So tell me so I know that you were sharing with me that you've been the lead of and the founder of several companies. As you've done that, what lesson have you learned that you feel like would be really important for me to know as I'm starting my journey here?
Yeah, it's a good one. I think we get better each time. The foundation is this like the more explicit you are about what your that intention and the values of the company, its mission, its purpose, its vision, how you want people to show up, how you value them is really important in the beginning because we do spend a lot of time in our work. And I think that the more clear we're about that driving that expectation against a set of measures, it's not just expectations without a measurement, but it's being really clear about that. The more clear, the more aligned you'll get as you hire people and have them stay as part of the team, and then they'll own it with you. And a lot of people talk about the servant leader model, and I
Yeah.
think like you can assert that, but actually it's only sort of earned and given from the way other people perceive you. And what would you have to do to actually earn that? And I think often that just comes down to sort of being there to do what your dad did for you, be supportive of someone along their journey to be successful and to have them believe that. And that's behavior is always this funny word because everyone says, what is behavior? And behavior is what you do, right? That's what it is. And so if you put values on the wall in a poster, but you do something different, then you're not really
Mhm.
living to those. So if you're going to create them, make them real, make sure you communicate that to the people you hire or part of your team. Support, celebrate, and then sort of and just give away as much as you possibly can to a lot of other people because we all love to own something. The thing that I learned along my life, somewhat connected to this, but the things that you don't like the way they feel, no one likes that. So pick up this easy example. You nag your son and he doesn't like that. And then he goes and nags someone. Like, well, the same thing is true on the other side. Like you want to be empowered to do the work. So does everyone who work with you. So Like, let them do that because that's what we all love. And so the more aware we are of that, the more that we participate, I think the better. Because the founder can get this sort of like, it's all because of me. And I think it's really all because of us. And in the beginning, if people believe that, then you'll have wild success because you'll accomplish something that you couldn't have alone, but with others you can.
Wow. That's incredibly powerful. I read a quote the other day, and your comment about servant leadership made me think of it. It was, as a leader, don't be thinking about the position that you're in today. Be thinking about how it's going when you're out of that position, how others are going to feel the impact of it. So, how did you impact others while you were in that role? And so, yeah, that's really good advice for sure.
Yeah, so the Chasing Tomorrow podcast was named because I always like this sort of leaning into the future. And of course, you are doing that in a very deep and rich way. So I think you've answered this question a lot, but what's your Chasing Tomorrow? What's the next 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, 24 months look for you?
Yeah, I mean, professionally, we've talked about that a lot, right? It's launching this company. It's helping 2,000 businesses over the next 12 months to be able to chase their tomorrow, right? And so that's what it looks like on a professional level. But personally, it is just better health, making sure that I'm making time for myself. I really want to start to focus on the full thing, the mind, the body, and the spirit, right? And kind of
Yeah.
bringing that into alignment. And so that's what I'm chasing tomorrow for myself personally.
Well, that's amazing. Hope we're all excited that you have stepped into the entrepreneurial world again, that you're doing it with a view of the future, not the way it was done. We're going to root for your success. We'll
Thank
follow you. I think you have an Instagram account. Is that the best way to follow you?
Yeah, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, any of those would be great.
All right. Well, we'll make sure we note that. And thanks so much for being on the podcast. Really appreciate it. Have a great one.
Thank you, Joe.